All right, here we are after the movie. Also after a few drinks. Shh. And Ted has seen the movie finally for the first time.
Yeah, this is my first time drinking.
The only time. The only time that he's seen the movie. So this is his initial reaction to the movie and things that he wants to say and talk about. So here we go. What did you think of Spider-Man: Homecoming?
It was my favorite Spider-Man movie thus far, and there were like two versions of Spider-Man before this, right?
Yes, movie-wise, yes.
Okay, and I saw maybe two and a half of those movies. Hey, dessert.
Yep.
There you go.
Awesome. All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Everything else good?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so. I think I might need another fork, though. I miss.
Okay. I'll just get you some more silverware.
All right, thank you.
Very well.
Thank you. Like, I saw, so there are like two trilogies before this, right?
Sort of. The first one was a trilogy. The second one only had two movies because the second movie was so ill-received that they did not make a third one, even though they had planned to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well,
There you go.
thank you, sir.
You're very welcome.
Well, I saw, I think, 2.5 of those movies.
Okay.
Of those, maybe 3. I don't really know.
Shit.
Jeez, man.
Trying to switch hands. That's all that was. I promise. That was not a result of alcohol consumption. It would have been worse if it had been a result of that.
All right. So anyway, my initial reviews of this movie. First of all, I'm glad that they skipped an entire origin story. Granted, I never read the comic books or anything like that. I don't really know anything about the Spider-Man origin stories or whatnot, and that's fine.
However, rest assured that this man before you is still a nerd.
Oh yeah, definitely. I've seen every Star Trek thing there is, but I don't really do a lot of comic book stuff. And I don't knock people who do. That's why I take this geek with me to see, these comic book movies, is because when everybody in the theater laughs at something and I have no clue what they're talking about, I can just lean on this jerk and say, hey, why is everybody laughing? And then he'll explain in something about, comic book issue 52 of that was released back in 1987.
I do not get that detailed.
I'm trying to talk you up here, you jerk.
Still.
But no, I like watching comic book movies with this guy because he can fill me in on backstory as if like I could do for people who are watching Star Trek. But anyway,
It's actually thanks to this guy that I know so much about Star Trek, even though I'm not actually that interested in it, that I can tell people that Spock is half human.
There you go. Yeah, that would be a good example. But anyway, about this movie, Spider-Man, the subtitle is Homecoming?
Yes.
That's what it is? I just called it Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Nobody questioned me. But no, I like that it did not have an origin story, because I really wasn't, from the first two versions of Spider-Man, nothing about either one of those origin stories even made me want to care about most of the characters. I mean, I understood the plight of some, people in poverty and, just trying to make ends meet and stuff like that, but it's like...
Oh, and by the way, that laugh was at a text alert that I got while we're filming this. So, all right, go on.
Okay. Anyway, so I was not disappointed that there was somewhat of a lack of an origin story. I just kind of, surmised, his plight and his life and such things as that. But my favorite part about this movie was the fact that the bad guy, I always want to see a bad guy, I would compare him to a Dr. Freeze from the animated Batman series, who a bad guy with a cause, a bad guy if not with, specifically with a cause, but a bad guy who believes in what he is doing. Okay, I liked that here as Michael Keaton played yet another avian character. Vulture, is that
Yes,
what they
yes.
ended up calling him? I mean, he
Yes.
never even self-proclaimed a name, as far as I
Right,
can
but
tell.
in the comic books, the character he was playing is Adrian Toomes, and that character's alter ego as a villain was the Vulture.
Okay, there you go. The Vulture. So the Vulture, he has a cause, and it is his family, and he's an entrepreneur. He has he doesn't just have his family to worry about. If you're an entrepreneur, you've got other families to worry about. The families of your employees and whatnot. And I appreciate a guy who believes he's doing the right thing. I appreciate. And I also appreciate his little monologue about how he believes he's doing exactly what Tony Stark was doing, but on a smaller level. And speaking of Tony Stark, I appreciate the allusion to the Goose, Howard Hughes Goose, quote unquote, the wooden airplane, the largest airplane ever to be flown. Or the world record breaking. I don't know. They've probably made larger since then, but at the time, the world record breaking Goose that Howard Hughes made. The only plot hole I saw in it would be I don't get Tony Stark putting all his eggs in one basket, one airplane, and then leaving it so underguarded.
To be honest, I don't think he did leave it all in one airplane. I think the trucks from that earlier scene were part of the move as well.
Okay, fine, but that's probably the only plot hole that I really
the 8 years thing, but yeah.
Okay, and speaking of the 8 years thing, it did not have a bunch of montages to handle the expository dialogue. It had maybe 2 montages in it, but the one that explained the 8 years from the destruction of New York to the Michael Keaton character, creating a destruction cleanup crew and all that and whatnot. And then when they took some of the scrap from that destruction, we needed at least a little montage of what they did with all that stuff over the 8 years, and we got it, and it was good. And then there was one other montage where, Spider-Man's suit was teaching him all of the options that he had once he'd hacked into, its features and whatnot. And that was fine and interesting, but it wasn't like some musical montage, which ended up meaningless in the end. It was, fairly well-paced and interesting and very short, which is something I appreciate in a montage. I think they're taking a cue from Chris Nolan there, who is my favorite director of our generation, to do that. But anyway, getting back to the Michael Keaton character and his motivations and whatnot, I liked how we saw the ending, the end result of Spider-Man intervening. And while you don't want bad things to happen to his daughter and to the daughter and wife or the family of, or the many families that were depending on Michael Keaton's character, you don't want anything bad to happen to them. But I do appreciate that we did see some fallout. That there were some bad results of the good things that Spider-Man did in there, which really did a good job of adding to the motivations of the bad guy character, which I always find satisfying, because the best bad guys are the guys who believe. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
The best bad guys are the guys who believe that they're doing something good, who actually believe in what they're doing and whatnot. Whether you agree with them or not, it's not the point. But anyway, the expository dialogue throughout the movie, there weren't any scenes where it was just 2 guys just sitting in a car and for more than a minute or two with long exposition about what's going on in the movie or information that you needed to know and such things as that. I think they took another cue from Chris Nolan in that regard when they took a large amount of information and they spread it evenly across a 2-hour movie. How long was the movie? A couple hours.
133 minutes. So it was
Okay,
over
so
2 hours.
2 hours and 13 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyway,
At least that's what the runtime says on the theater's website.
okay. So, anyway, these are my initial impressions of the movie. Give me another day to think about it and obsess about it, as is my nature, and I'm sure I'll have some better things to say about it and more interesting things to say about it. But for the short term, I definitely enjoyed the movie, and it would inspire me to see a sequel, which I'm pretty sure they're
planning, yes.
clear that it will come.
And also Spider-Man, as far as I understand from what I've seen, it will be in the next Avengers movie, which is Infinity War, and takes place in space, where the Avengers, Spider-Man, and the Guardians of the Galaxy will all be present in the movie.
Well, all right then.
I do have one question regarding this specific movie, however.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on the hero of the movie not letting the villain die, as happens with many movies prior, where the where the superhero allows the villain to die? This time, the superhero was not going to let that happen. He intentionally saved the villain. Went in and he was afraid that the villain was dead and went in to make sure, and when he found the villain still alive, pulled him out of the wreckage to keep him alive.
Okay, to my admittedly very limited knowledge of the Spider-Man lore and history,
it's not just Spider-Man.
Thing is that, like, when Tony Stark is admonishing him to be the friendly neighborhood crime fighter, like the small time guy, you know what I mean?
Right.
That doesn't generally include killing people.
Right, you're
You know
right.
what
It
I'm
does
saying?
not. Yeah.
And so I think in their attempt to, make it still accessible to the people who see Spider-Man as the guy who is able to dispense justice without kills.
Yeah.
I think they were trying to appeal to that audience.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't bother me that he let him live. In fact, it would appear that left it open to a sequel with that character very much a part of the movies.
Like such as they were going to do a movie where a bunch of Spider-Man villains got together, similar to the Suicide Squad movie, but probably much better executed. It leaves room for Vulture to be involved in that particular thing.
Is that coming out? Is that a
Yes,
real thing?
it is.
Okay. Cool. Don't ruin it for me, but we'll watch it together, I'm sure.
At least that's the plan. They have that plan. I don't know if it's going to eventually happen, but they do plan to do one at the moment. But development hell is a thing that happens, and who knows, it could happen.
All right.
So, all right. I don't think I have much more. I don't think I have any more questions. And since I have no more questions, he really doesn't have anything more to say. So we're gonna go. So have a good one.